Hello friends. So how are you all? Very good morning, right? I hope your eyes are open now. Okay, and it will be open with the lecture that is going to be given right now. Okay, so myself Abhishek Bhartiya sir is going again with the strength of material. So yesterday we have discussed the module 1 of the introduction chapter. Yes, today we will be proceeding with the module 2 of the introduction chapter. So let's see that. Let's see that. Okay, so in the module 1 of the strength of material, we have studied about what type of body we are going to study. Yes, come on, anyone mention in the comment what type of body we used to study? What type of body we used to study? Tell me. It is linearly elastic deformable body. Yes or no? It is linearly elastic deformable body. Okay, ductile material is weak in shear, so it will fail in a plane of maximum shear. It will fail on a plane of maximum shear. Brittle matter is weak in tension, so it will fail on a plane of maximum tensile stress, right? We have seen few assumptions. We have studied about homogeneous, isotropic, non-isotropic, that is anisotropic. Yes, and thereafter we have seen about factor of safety. So that was the thing that we discussed in the module 1. Now we are heading to the next module, that is module 2 of the introduction chapter, in which the first basic thing that we are going to talk is about strain energy. The first basic thing that we are going to talk here is strain energy. Okay, so what is strain energy? What is strain energy? Can anyone tell me? Energy, what is energy? What is energy? It is a work done, right? It is a work done by your body. That is the energy. Okay, so what is strain energy? Suppose you are applying a load on a deformable body. Okay, due to the load acting on the deformable body, the body is going to deform. So due to that external load, the work is done on the body by that external load. Yes or no? The work is done by the body on that done on the body by that external load, right? This work done is assumed to be stored in the body in the form of energy, which is referred as strain energy. Is it clear? Is it clear what I'm saying? What is strain energy? It is the energy stored within the deformable body, within the deformable body, due to work done by the externally applied load, externally applied load on the body. Is it clear? Is it clear? Right? So you should make it very clear. Unless and until you apply the external load, that external load is giving the deformation, the energy cannot be stored. Is it clear? So if you apply the external load, then only you can expect that the strain energy is stored in the body. Okay. So now the strain energy has the different terms, right? So what are the different terms? That can be toughness, modulus of toughness, then resilience, proof resilience, modulus of resilience. In the exam, most of you don't realize the importance of these 5 topics. Reason being, you don't understand, you just mug up. Now just try to understand the different terms. So first, I'm going to talk about toughness and modulus of toughness. Toughness and modulus of toughness. Okay. So, first of all, when I'm saying toughness or modulus of toughness, this is due to impact load. This is not due to gradual load or sudden load. this is due to impact load. The energy stored in the body due to impact load is referred as toughness or modulus of toughness, depending we are taking the full volume or per unit volume. Okay, so what is toughness? First of all, it is due to impact load. Is due to impact load. First point. Second point, see, we are talking about strain energy, but that is also defined up to a point. Okay, that is also defined up to a point. Okay, so when I'm saying toughness, it is a strain energy stored in the body due to impact loading just before failure. Right? What I'm saying about toughness? What I'm saying about toughness? What is toughness? What is toughness? It is the strain energy stored in the deformable body. See, I'm writing again and again deformable body so that you can understand. In the deformable body due to impact loading, just before failure or fracture. Just before failure. Okay, now, so if I want to show this mathematically or graphically, see here, what is strain energy? I already told you, it's nothing but work done by the externally applied load. So if I just draw a random diagram, I'm not seeing this as for the mild steel, I'm drawing the random diagram. Okay, and this is the failure point. This is the P delta curve. This is P delta curve. So this is P delta curve. So the area, do you know that the area under the P delta curve is a work done? Yes or no? You know that the area under the P delta curve is a work done? Yes. So here also the area under P delta curve, this area under P delta curve, I'm mentioning very clearly, this I've drawn for impact loading, and this is not for mild steel. This is general, right? Because the same diagram cannot be drawn for mild steel. For mild steel in case of static loading and impact loading. Okay, I'm just drawing the diagram normal because this type of question they used to ask in the exam. Okay, so this area under the P delta curve is representing the work done. That is nothing but toughness. This is nothing but toughness. Is it clear? Is it clear? This is toughness. So that's about toughness. Now I'm going to talk about modulus of toughness. I'm going to talk about modulus of toughness. So what is modulus of toughness? It is nothing but toughness that is defined per unit volume of the body, right? Per unit volume of the component, it is defined. Toughness is defined for entire volume and modulus of toughness is defined for per unit volume. So what can be its definition? It's the strain energy stored in the deformable body due to impact loading per unit volume of the component just before failure. Is it clear? So what I'm writing? It is the strain energy stored in the body per unit volume of component due to impact loading just before failure just before failure. Or what we can write, toughness per unit volume of component. We can write as toughness per unit volume of component. Modulus of toughness is nothing but toughness per unit volume of component. Is it clear? Okay. Now here the modulus of toughness is given by area under sigma epsilon curve, that is stress strain curve. Why I am saying sigma epsilon curve, I will explain this later. I will explain this when I will be teaching you the resilience. I will give the derivation also. Okay, so if I draw the stress strain curve, for any material, so this is the diagram. So this area, that is the area of the stress strain curve just before failure. Okay, so this area of stress strain curve, this will give you modulus of toughness. Why it is giving, the stress strain curve is giving, I will explain this later. Okay, don't worry about that. Is it clear? Okay, so all those who understood this part, toughness and modulus of toughness, please give a thumbs up. Please say yes, we understood. Please say yes. Please read at this. Any doubt, please ask. Okay, now one important note that you should understand. In general, that what is generalized, in general, greater the toughness, more the ductility, greater the toughness, more the ductility, and vice versa. I hope you know the meaning of vice versa, right? So what do you mean by this? Greater the toughness, more the ductility. See, when I say a material is more ductile, then what I say, that if I say there are two material A and B, right? One is having the failure strain of epsilon Fa, other is having a failure strain of epsilon Fb. So one with the failure of epsilon Fb, if I look at the area under the curve, can be seen to be more for B than A. Yes or no? So this is generalized. Exceptions are there. Okay. So since epsilon Fa is less than epsilon Fb, so B is more ductile. Okay. Also, area under P delta curve, area of A sample is less than area of B sample. Yes. So B is having more toughness than A. B is having more toughness than A. I hope it is clear. So this is generalized. That greater the toughness, more the ductility, and vice versa. Okay. But I'm telling you very frankly, the exceptions are there. But in general, if I say, I can say this: greater the toughness, more the ductility. Is it clear? So what is toughness and what is ductility? Is it clear? Okay then. See now, we are moving to the next part, that is resilience. Very important. Resilience. Okay. Resilience. So What is resilience? What is resilience? Try to understand what is resilience. Again, it is a strain energy. For which type of load? For gradual load, or better to say gradual load, for static load, in which we will study about the gradual loading. Okay, so resilience is the strain energy stored in the body, strain energy stored in the body within the elastic limit. That means it is not at the elastic limit, but less than the elastic limit points, the resilience is defined. Okay, so what is resilience? I'm saying that strain energy stored in the body due to static load, that to gradual static load, okay, because we are studying about that in this particular part. Okay, the resilience is also due to sudden static load, but right now I'm talking about the gradual static load, and that too within the elastic limit. So I'm saying the resilience, draw the P delta curve, Now I'm drawing for mild steel. This is for mild steel. Now I'm drawing for mild steel. So this point is the elastic limit point. So suppose at any particular point the load is there and corresponding deflection is there. Okay, so this area under the P delta curve, under P delta curve is resilience. Is it clear? This is resilience. So what I'm saying about resilience? It is the strain energy stored in the body due to static loading within the elastic limit. One thing that you should be very clear: within means below the point of the elastic limit. Is it clear? And that to elastic limit, not proportionality limit. Is it clear? And area is given by area under the P delta curve. That is not an issue. Okay, next I'm going to see the topic, that is proof resilience. Here itself we are going to see about proof resilience. You're going to study about proof resilience. So what is proof resilience? It is a strain energy stored in the body due to the static loading, not within but up to the elastic limit. Up to means at that point in the elastic limit we are talking about the strain energy. Is it clear? So if I draw the P delta curve, then see here, this is P delta curve, this is the curve. Okay, and here somewhere there is a elastic limit. Okay, there is a elastic limit. So I'm talking about the load at the elastic limit and corresponding deflection, and I'm going to find the area under the P delta curve. Okay, so if the area is found till the elastic limit, up to the elastic limit, then the area under this curve, area under P delta curve, this is referred as proof resilience. Is it clear? So what is this? It is the strain energy stored in the body due to static loading loading. Now what the change will be there? Up to the elastic limit. Up to the elastic limit. Is it clear? So what is the change? Up to, it is the elastic limit, but up to point we are taking. That means till that point I'm saying. So that is your proof resilience. Okay. Now next that is modulus of resilience. Next is your modulus of resilience. So what is modulus of resilience? It is nothing but strain energy. Listen to me very carefully. It is the strain energy stored in the body due to static load up to the elastic limit per unit volume of the component. Per unit volume of the component. So what we can say? Can we say it's that resilience per unit volume or proof resilience per unit volume? Say, can we say as a resilience per unit volume as a modulus of resilience or proof resilience per unit volume? Yes? Resilience or proof resilience? Okay, let me explain that. See here what I said. Let me write the definition first. It is the strain energy stored in the body due to static load up to the elastic limit per unit volume of component. Per unit volume of component. So if I'm saying this per unit volume of component, so what we are saying this is nothing but proof resilience per unit volume. I hope it is clear. Proof resilience per unit volume. Yes, proof resilience per unit volume. Yes, all these are objective questions here. Okay, so I draw the diagram. So diagram will not be P delta, it will be sigma epsilon curve for modulus of resilience. Just going to explain why. Okay, so if I draw the sigma epsilon curve, and this is my elastic limit point. So this area under the curve will represent as modulus of resilience. I hope it is clear, right? So this is the point of definition. Any doubt in these three terms, please ask. Please have a look at this. What the resilience? What is resilience? What is proof resilience? What is modulus of resilience? Is it clear? Give a thumbs up if you understood, or yes sir, we understood. Just write this. Come on. Okay. Then let's see equations of resilience. Equations for resilience. This equation we will be using further in the questions. Okay, sir. See here. So for getting the equations of resilience, the first and foremost thing, the assumption that we are taking over here is assumption. What is the first assumption? All the external work done is stored in the body in the form of strain energy. There is no loss of energy. Right? So let me write that. All the external work done is stored in the body in the form of strain energy Okay, there is no loss. There is no loss of energy. Okay, that is your first assumption. Second is, see, actually in the curve there are 3 points. One is the proportionality limit, elastic limit, and the yield limit. So in the analysis, we are considering that, for the analysis we are considering that all the 3 points are same. This is the first thing that you should understand. For the strain energy derivation, we are considering all the three terms as a one, right? That means your elastic limit, proportionality limit, proportionality limit, and yield limit are considered to be same. So if you are considering it to be same, just tell me one thing: will the curve be linear till the elastic limit, or we say yield limit? Yes or no? Because all the points are at the all the points the same. Yes. So the curve will be linear. So this imply what? Linear curve. And Hooke's law is valid. Yes or no? Linear curve. Second, the stress at the elastic limit can be considered to be yield. Yes or no? Because we are considering this assumption. So stress at elastic limit can be considered as yield stress because of the assumption that we are taking. Okay, so these are the two assumptions. I hope it is clear to everyone. Yes. Okay, so let's move with the derivation then. Derivation. So for the derivation, see, I'm telling you very clearly, I believe in a concept that you should understand each and every topic rather than just mugging up. If I just give you do the rectification, that's not possible. Okay, so I'm drawing the P delta curve. Okay, so this is my point where I'm saying this is only elastic limit, this is only your proportionality limit, this is only your yield limit. The load is yielding, yes, at this point, and the curve will be linear. Okay, so I'm considering a point below this particular load, that is P, and corresponding deflection as delta. Okay, so this area under the curve, this area is nothing but resilience. Okay, resilience, that is strain energy. Yes, so see here. So what is resilience or strain energy? Resilience is denoted as capital U. What we can write about this resilience? Area under the curve, that is half into P into delta. So this is the general form of resilience. Yes, this is the first equation that we are getting. Okay, now since I've already told elastic limit, proportionality limit are same, so Hooke's law is valid. And if Hooke's law is valid, if Hooke's law is valid, yes, so we can say that stress is directly proportional to strain, that too within the proportionality limit, right? So what is the stress? That is nothing but engineering stress. Stress is nothing but engineering stress. So that is denoted as sigma, which is even load upon area. So load P is there, area says, let us say the initial area is capital A. Okay, that is sigma. So from here, what we can write, P is equal to sigma into A. Yes or no? Next, we are going to talk about strain. Strain is denoted by epsilon. That is the change in length upon original length. So change in length is delta. Let us say original length is L. See, this particular part that I am writing is based on the part that there is a bar, let us say, that is mild steel here, It is subjected to the load of P. Initial length is L and the cross section area is A, that is initial area. And due to the load, there is a deformation, and due to this deformation, the deformed length is L plus delta. Is it clear? So strain is change in length upon original length. So change in length is delta and the initial length is L. So from here we can write delta is equal to epsilon into L. Delta is equal to epsilon into L. Is it clear? So this is your second and third part. So put 2 and 3 in 1. Put 2 and 3 in 1. So if you put 2 and 3 in 1, U will be equal to half into P is equal to sigma A, delta is equal to epsilon L. Yes. So we can write this as half into sigma into epsilon into A initial area into length. So what is this A into L? If you look at the diagram of the bar, what is A into L? Nothing but volume of component. Yes or no? So volume of component that is V, this is equal to A into L. Okay. So I'm going to write A into L as V in the future derivations. Okay. So I'm coming here itself. Okay then. So we can write this U as half into sigma into epsilon into volume. Any doubt? Any doubt here? Okay. Now Hooke's law is valid, right? So for the axial loading or for the normal load, we know that from the Hooke's law, this is my fourth equation. We know that we can write sigma is equal to E into epsilon for the normal load. Yes. So this is my fifth equation. Yes. And one more thing that we can replace is epsilon is equal to sigma by E. So this is the sixth one. Okay. So if I put 5 in 4, so what I'm going to get? U is equal to half into E into epsilon square into volume of component. Yes or no? Yes or no? Yes. So we got one more formula. Okay. Now put 6 in 4. Put 6 in 4. What formula you are going to get? Sigma square by 2E into volume of component. One more formula for the resilience. Is it clear? One more formula for the resilience. So from here, if I want to find the proof resilience, so what is proof resilience? It's the strain energy at the elastic limit. So at the elastic limit, I'm telling it's a yielding. So we can write this as U is equal to sigma y square by 2E into volume of component. Yes, we can write this U is equal to sigma y square by 2E into volume of component. Say, we can write this now. Okay. Now, what is modulus of resilience? Modulus of resilience. That is nothing but proof resilience per unit volume. Yes or no? And what is proof resilience per unit volume? We can write this as sigma square y square by 2E. Now I think with this particular formula, you can understand why I'm saying that the modulus of resilience or modulus of toughness can be found using the area under the sigma epsilon curve. If you see in this particular equation, we can write this as half into sigma y into epsilon. Yes or no? That is nothing but area under the sigma epsilon curve. Getting the point? Yes. So what are the various formulas we obtained? What are the various formulas we obtained? Various formulas we obtained. First, U is equal to, that strain energy is equal to half into P into delta. Yes, then half into sigma into epsilon into volume of component. Then E into epsilon square by 2 into volume of component. Then sigma square by 2E into volume of component. Yes or no? What else we obtained? Proof resilience. Proof resilience as sigma y square by 2E into volume of component. Then modulus of resilience, what we obtained? Sigma y square by 2E. So just remember these formulas, right? Just remember this formula. Some more formula we'll add in the future after we study the stress chapter. Okay, till now I hope all these 4 formulas are simple and it should be very clear to you all. Okay, so any doubt, please ask. Any doubt in this formula, please ask. Any doubt in this formula, please ask. Okay, okay, then is it clear? Is it clear? Okay, see then. So I hope you understood what is resilience, what is proof resilience, what is modulus of resilience, what is toughness, what is modulus of toughness. I'm repeating once more. If I say toughness, so what is toughness? Come on, participate. What is toughness? Toughness, impact load or gradual load? It is due to impact load or gradual load or sudden load? Obviously impact load, right? It is due to impact load. Now I'm talking at which point? Failure or till the elastic limit in case of toughness? Failure or till the elastic limit? Failure, right? So what I'm saying, that toughness is the strain energy stored in the body due to impact loading just before failure. Just before failure. And what is modulus of toughness? It is the toughness per unit volume, right? So area under the P delta curve will give you toughness, and area under the sigma epsilon curve just before failure will give you modulus of toughness. Resilience, what I said, it's the strain energy stored in the body. It is the strain energy stored in the body within the elastic limit. Within the elastic limit, right? And thereafter, what is proof resilience? Up to the elastic limit. Modulus of resilience, nothing but proof resilience per unit volume. Okay, okay. So let's see the next one. I'm going to discuss the next topic, that is creep. Okay, so before explaining, I would like you to participate. What is creep? What is creep? What is creep? What is creep? Tell me. What do you know about creep? What do you know about creep? Permanent deformation, yes? Yes? Anything else you know? Due to which one? Constant load, gradual load, dead load? What type of load is there for the causing of creep? What else do you know? Come on, discuss. It would be better. More you discuss, the more you will understand. What do you know about creep? What do you know about creep? Okay, see then. So if I talk about creep, try to understand. It is plastic deformation. See, any material can be having 2 type of deformation. One is a elastic deformation and other is a plastic deformation, right? So creep is a plastic deformation. The name itself clear. Plastic means if I remove the load, it will not regain its original position, right? So creep, I'm saying as it is a plastic deformation, occurs due to 2 things. First, dead load. The second, constant load. Okay, so for example, if I say there is a bar which is overhang. There's a bar which is overhang. So the first of all, due to its self weight, that is a dead load, it is going to undergo the elastic deformation that I'm saying as delta LS. So this is your elastic deformation. So the first elastic deformation will occur. The first elastic deformation will occur. Now with period of time, what will happen? The plastic deformation, the plastic deformation will start in the structure. Plastic deformation will start in the structure, which I'm saying as delta Ly. This is plastic deformation. This is plastic deformation, which I'm saying as creep. Okay, so what do you understand? What you understood about this creep from this part? That it is the plastic deformation that occurs over the period of time due to, in this case, dead load. Okay, okay. Next one. Next one. Suppose there is a bar, and this bar is not vertical. So I'm not considering the self weight, and it is subjected to axial load of P. Okay, axial load of P. So if this subjected to the axial load of P, the first of all, it is going to have elastic deformation. This elastic deformation I'm saying as delta LS. Now with time, if this load is applied continuously on this particular bar, what will happen? What will happen? It will undergo plastic deformation. It will undergo plastic deformation, and this plastic deformation I'm saying as creep. This delta Ly is the plastic deformation. This delta Ly is the plastic deformation. Okay, which I'm saying as creep. Which I'm saying as creep. Is it clear? Is it clear? So this plastic deformation is creep. Got the point? Yes. So can anyone now give me the definition of creep? Final definition of creep. Can anyone give me the final definition of creep? Yes. Yes. Come on. Come on. Please write in the comment. What is the plastic definition of creep? Definition. 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 What is the creep definition? What is the creep definition? It is the plastic deformation which occurs on the deformable body over the period of time due to what? Either dead load or self weight, dead load or statically applied load. Statically applied load. Is it clear? Statically applied load. So that is the definition part. So I hope you understood the creep. Yes. Now next is, what are the factors affecting creep? Factors affecting creep. What are the factors that are going to affect the creep? What are the factors that are going to affect the creep? So see, the first factor is temperature. The first factor is temperature. So in the temperature, there is a term that is homologous temperature. Homologous temperature. There is a term that is homologous temperature. So first try to understand. We know that greater the temperature, more the molecule movement and more the deformation you can see. Yes. So what is homologous temperature? It is a temperature at which the creep changes from tolerable to intolerable or intolerable to tolerable. That means suppose any material is there, okay, so till a particular temperature there is not sufficient creep in the structure that we need to design, okay, that I'm saying as a tolerable creep. Okay, now after this temperature, if the temperature is increased further, the plastic deformation will be so much that we need to design for that particular creep. Is it clear? So that I'm saying as creep as intolerable, right? So the homologous temperature is a temperature which has a transition for the creep to be tolerable or intolerable, right? So what I'm saying as homologous temperature, it is the transition temperature for creep to be tolerable or intolerable. Is it clear? Tolerable or intolerable. Next, what can I say? Below homologous temperature, creep is tolerable. Tolerable means not to be considered for the design, okay, and above homologous temperature, creep is intolerable. That means I don't have to consider for the design. Is it clear? Okay, so that is temperature. Yes, and one more thing, what we can write, greater the temperature, in the note itself, greater the temperature, more the creep. Greater the temperature, more the creep. Is it clear? Okay, now let us see the second one. After temperature, that is your time, how the creep vary with time. So for understanding of the variation with time, I'm going to show you the curve of load versus deflection curve. Okay, P delta curve I'm going to show. So P delta curve. So first of all, we are going to apply, or sorry, deformation with time I'm going to draw rather than P delta curve. Draw the deformation with time, delta with time. So how the variation we are going to see? See, the first of all, we are going to see the elastic deformation. This is delta LS. Okay, that is elastic deformation. Elastic deformation. Okay, now after the elastic deformation is over, there will be plastic deformation with time. Okay, so what you are going to see that over the period of time, with increasing time, the deformation is increasing. That means creep is increasing. But if you look at the creep rate, so this creep rate is decreasing. Is it clear? So what we can write, with time, creep increases. With time, creep increases, but creep rate decreases. Is it clear? With time, creep increases, but creep rate decreases. Okay, that's again objective question. Third factor that is going to affect the creep, is your magnitude, or nature of load. That is nothing but magnitude. So greater the magnitude of the load, more the effect of creep. Yes or no? So what we can write, greater the magnitude of load, what we can say, more the effect of creep, more the effect of creep. Okay, now there's a question for you all. Due to creep, stress, option A, increases, option B, decreases, option C, remains constant, or option D, both increases and decreases. Come on, tell me. Due to creep, what will happen to the stress? Will it increase? Will it decrease? Will it remain constant, or will it have increase and decrease effect? Come on, tell me. Yes. Mark the options. Yes. A, B, C, D. Okay, how many favoring A? B, C. Okay, D. So what is the answer? It's C. It's not A or B or D. C. I'm saying stress as load upon initial area. So load is constant, area is the initial area. Yes, so stress always remains constant. Got the point? Yes or no? So these are the factors affecting the creep. So any problem in the creep, please ask. So creep is what? It is the plastic deformation which occurs in the deformable body over the period of time due to dead load or statically applied load, which we say as a constant load. Okay, so factors, one is temperature, then time, then nature of load. Is it clear? Okay then. See, moving to the next term, that is fatigue and endurance limit. Fatigue and endurance limit. So can anyone tell me what is fatigue? And what is endurance limit? Yes, come on, say. What is fatigue? Yes, anyone? Endurance limit? Fatigue and endurance limit, anyone? Okay. What is fatigue? What is endurance limit? Yes. See then, till now, whatever the loading we have talked about, that is one type of load. Okay, we have applied the load either from the height, or we have applied the load on the bar suddenly or gradually. But in the fatigue, what happened? We apply the alternate tension and compression. Suppose if I, in a material, if I take at one particular time there is a tension, then at the other time there will be compression. Is it clear? So that type of load is acting on the structure, and due to this the failure occurs in the structure, right? And this type of failure that occurs due to the cyclic loading or reversal of stress, right? This we say as a fatigue. Okay, so what is fatigue? What is fatigue? It is the failure. Due to dynamic loading, or we say this as cyclic loading or reversal of stress. I hope you understood the meaning of reversal of stress. That means one of the example is alternate tension and compression. Okay, that is fatigue. Now next is, what is endurance limit? See, this chapter is of theory. This chapter more consists of theory. Next chapter you can't see any theory. This is the only chapter we consist of more theory. Okay. So next chapter on we will have more number of numericals. Okay. So this chapter only we have to consider the theory, because the theory is not clear, you cannot answer the big questions. Okay. So what is endurance limit? What is endurance limit? Come on, anyone? See here. Till now, when we talk about yield limit, or we have talked about the ultimate limit, ultimate strength point, so there the failure is occurring due to static load, right? There is a static load. There is not reversal of stress. Now, due to the alternate loading, that is cyclic loading or reversal of stress, what happened? The material can fail prior to its ultimate strength or yield strength. Okay, and we need to design for that particular point, not for the yield limit or for the ultimate limit. Getting the point? And that limit is referred as endurance limit. So what is endurance limit? The strength for which the material need to be designed, the material need to be designed when subjected to reversal of stress. Reversal of stress. Is it clear? Now for a material endurance limit is less than its yield strength and ultimate strength. Less than its yield strength and ultimate strength. Is it clear? Yes or no? Okay. Now, what is the problem for the, see, if the matter is subjected to reversal of stress, then what happen? Even a ductile material will fail suddenly without giving any indication. Okay, because it will not reach the yield point, it will be failing before reaching the yield point. So cracks are not developed and the material will fail suddenly, right? So if the material is subjected to alternate tension and compression or the reversal of stress, and we need to design for the endurance limit, then we have to consider higher factor of safety. Getting the point? Why I am saying higher factor of safety? Because even the ductile material will fail as a fracture, will fail in the fracture. Getting the point? Yes. So for reversal of stress, higher factor of safety should be considered. Higher factor of safety should be considered. Is it clear? We need to consider the higher factor of safety for the endurance, for the material subjected to the alternate tension and compression. Is it clear? So all these comes in the, if you see the GATE objective or the ESE objective of the first chapter, you'll get into knowledge of all these terms that is frequently asked in the exam. Okay. Now, next we are going to see about your tensile test on mild steel. Tensile test on mild steel. Okay. So try to understand. Try to understand. If I want to go for the tensile test on mild steel, first let me clear you. This is a standard experiment, right? So a standard experiment is conducted at a standard place with the standard equipment. Okay. So the tensile test on mild steel is done by American standard for testing machines, done by American standard for testing machines, which is referred as ASTM, right? American standard for testing machines on universal testing machine, on universal testing machine, which is written as UTM, at a cylindrical specimen, at a cylindrical specimen. So why I'm saying cylindrical specimen, I'll show you the specimen. So the specimen somewhat look like this. So this is the specimen, and over this the load is applied, and the analysis is considered over a gauge length of over a gauge length of 2 inch, and the dia is of 0.5 inch. Now you can imagine the cylinder in this particular gauge length. Yes or no? Okay. So the result that is obtained, in this particular part after doing the tension test on the mild steel is as follows. I will explain you further that the first line that we have drawn is not having so much slope. Okay, so see here, this is a stress strain curve. Now they are having different points. In the exam, they may ask you about these points, or they may ask you which the order in which they occur. Okay, so origin point I'm saying as O, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Okay. Now this topic is very important for your interview, so you should be very clear with this topic. So A is your proportionality limit. A is your proportionality limit. A is the proportionality limit. B is elastic limit. B is elastic limit. C is upper yield point. D is lower yield point. D is referred as yield plateau. Then EF is referred as strain hardening region. Then FG is referred as strain softening region. Or necking region. Okay. Then F is ultimate stress point, ultimate stress, ultimate stress point, and G is your breaking stress point. G is your breaking stress point. G is your breaking stress point. Okay, so that we have seen that G, that is the breaking stress point. Now, let me give you the strain part. This D is 0.1%. 0.1%, it should be very clear what I'm saying as percent. I'm saying change in length upon initial length multiply with 100%. Is it clear? So that is 0.12%. Then here it can be around 1.5%. FG, it is 15 to 20% you can obtain, and G point you can see at 25 to 30%. So see here, after yielding you can see more deformation in the mild steel. So that is a plastic deformation. Is it clear? So that's why in the mild steel the plastic deformation is very high compared to the elastic deformation. Okay, now I'm going to give you the detail of the various points, right? So I'm going about the region OA region. So till OA region, if you apply the load, the material will regain its original position and Hooke's law is valid. So 2 points I'm saying. Material will regain its original position, and what I'm saying, Hooke's law is valid. Okay, till OA. Now suppose I'm talking about the AB region. So in the AB region the load is beyond the proportionality limit. So if the load is beyond the proportionality limit, so what I'm going to say, the matter will do not regain or regain, it will regain, but Hooke's law is not valid. So what I'm going to say, that material will regain its original position and Hooke's law is not valid. Hooke's law will be not valid. Hooke's law is not valid. Is it clear? Now I'm going to talk about C and D point, that is upper and lower yield point. Now try to understand this upper and lower yield point. This upper yield point, this is actually the point from where the yielding starts, but this is not constant for a given material. It varies depending on the speed of machine in which that testing is done. Is it clear? So what I'm saying about upper yield point, not constant for a material, yielding starts at this point. So obviously if it is not constant for the material, we cannot consider it for the design. Is it clear? So it is not considered for the design. Is it clear? Okay, now next is, what is lower yield point? See, it is constant for a material, that is mentioned D point. Now D point is the lower yield point, so it is constant for a material. So if it is constant, it is considered in the design. Is considered in the design. Is it clear? It is considered in the design. Hope it is clear, right? Okay, next is yield plateau, DE. Yield plateau Yield plateau. So what is this yield plateau? If you look, the stress remains constant in this yield plateau. The stress remains constant. Without increase in the stress, there is a sufficient deformation. There is continuous deformation that you can see, right? So in the yield plateau, the material get continuously deformed without increase in the stress, without increase in the load. Is it clear? So that is the yield plateau. Material continuously deformed, continuously deformed without increase in the stress. Is it clear? So that is your yield plateau. Next, there is a strain hardening region. There is a strain hardening, or that is strain hardening region. Strain hardening region. So what is strain hardening region? What is strain hardening region? Try to understand what is strain hardening region. See what will happen here in the strain hardening region. The material will, till the point T, the material is sufficiently deformed. Okay, now to produce the further deformation, you need to apply large amount of stress for the deformation to occur. That's why we are saying that strain hardening region, because to produce a small amount of strain, you need to increase the large amount of load. Getting the point? That's why I'm saying the strain hardening region, right? So due to sufficient hardening, due to sufficient hardening of the material till E to produce further deformation, large amount of load is required, hence the name is the strain hardening region. Getting the point? Yes or no? So last that is strain softening region. Strain softening region. So what is strain softening region? Try to understand. Now till the point F, material has sufficiently got to the particular stress, that is the maximum stress which a material can bear. Now with a small amount of change, what will happen? The material will have a sudden change in the cross section. Which is referred as necking. So what I'm saying, that suppose this is the material. Okay, so what will happen? There is sudden change in the cross section. Getting the point? There is sudden change in the cross section, and finally at point G, it will fail in the form of cup and cone. See, this is not exactly the form of cup and cone, I'm just showing this, right? It will fail in the form of cup and cone failure, right? Fail in the form of cup and cone, right? Basically, if I say the cup and cone failure, you can see like this. Okay, this is the cup and cone failure, but I'm just showing this cup, this at the angle of 45 degree. Getting the point? So this is complete detail about the stress strain curve for the mild steel, right? Most of the time they ask you in the interview. So this much data is sufficient for you, don't require anything else. Okay, so remember the points, the order in which they occur, right? No need to remember the strain, they never ask like this. Okay, just remember what are the different points and what is the use. Okay, that will be sufficient. Okay, one more thing, always remember, in the mild steel, F is the ultimate stress but not breaking. The breaking will not occur at F, it will occur at G. Is it clear? Yes? Okay. Okay then. Next is stress strain curve stress strain curve for different materials. Mild steel we have seen for different materials. Okay, so see here, draw the stress strain curve, sigma versus epsilon curve. So for the mild steel we have just seen, this is for mild steel, right? So there is a point that is proportionality limit, and here till here the slope is linear, right? So we know that sigma is equal to E epsilon because Hooke's law is valid till the proportionality limit, and E barabar sigma by epsilon. So don't you think if I say this as theta, so this E is nothing but tan theta? Yes or no? Right? So for mild steel, or for steel if I say, this E is equal to 2 into 10 power 5 Newton per mm square. Yes or no? So if I want to find the theta, so what is that theta? Nothing but tan inverse E. So if you find this tan inverse E, you are going to get around 89.99 degree. That means this particular slope is not so much, that is theta is like the line is almost vertical. Getting the point? So for any steel, we say E is nearly 2 into 10 power 5 Newton per mm square, right? So one thing that you should be very clear, that the slope of the mild steel, slope of the stress strain curve gives Young's modulus of elasticity. Now suppose I am taking the higher grade of steel like Fe415, Fe500, which is having the higher strength. So for them, what we need to write, since the slope is same, we'll start from the proportionality limit and then we'll extend further. So this is for Fe415. If I go for Fe500, again from proportionality limit, higher strength, so move up, Fe500. Yes. Then cast iron, if it's told, this is cast iron. I'm drawn bit down because E cast iron is E steel divided by 2, almost, right? Almost. Okay. And next, if I draw the aluminium, draw for aluminium, then again I'm drawn bit down because E aluminium is nearly E steel by 3. Getting the point? If I want to draw for cork, then wood, I'm just giving rough idea, right? Then concrete, then rubber we have already seen. Okay, so if we talk about wood, then E wood is around 1 by 8 to 1 by 15 of E steel. And if I talk about concrete, then E concrete is nearly 1 by 20, 1 by 10 to 1 by 20, 1 by 10 to 1 by 20 of E steel. Getting the point? So from here, I'm not explaining you that you remember this E values, but one thing that you should be very clear, that the slope of the stress strain curve, which is the concern for me, that the slope of the stress strain curve gives the Young's modulus of elasticity, right? Slope of stress strain curve, gives what? Young's modulus of elasticity. Is it clear? So what is the significance of this Young's modulus of elasticity? More the Young's modulus of elasticity of the material, more it will be elastic. Elastic doesn't mean the stretch. Stretch means ductility. Is it clear? So what I'm saying here, greater the E value, more the material will be elastic. So just tell me one thing. Just tell me one thing from the curve. Which is more elastic, rubber or steel? Which is more elastic, rubber or steel? Yes. Mention the comment. Which is more elastic, rubber or steel? Obviously rubber, right? Na? No, rubber is ductile, not elastic. Not elastic. So steel is more elastic. Steel is more elastic than rubber. Steel is more elastic than rubber. Is it clear? Is it clear? Yes. So steel is more elastic than rubber. Got the point? Yes. So I hope you understood clearly stress strain curve for the different material. Now next point that we are going to see is design strength for the material not showing definite yield point. Definite yield point. Design strength for the material not showing definite yield point. So try to understand this. Most of the material like aluminium, copper, brass, bronze don't show the definite yield point. And if it is a ductile material, we need to design for the yield point, right? So how we are going to design in such case? Suppose I am going to draw for aluminium. I'm drawing the stress strain curve for aluminium. Okay, I'm going to draw the stress strain curve for aluminium. Okay, so for the aluminium, there is a failure strain. For the aluminium, there is a failure strain, right? Now, what I am going to do? I'm going to take the offset in the direction of strain axis of some percentage. So for aluminium, it is 0.2% of failure strain, right? 0.2% of the failure strain. For high load, for small load, it is 0.1%. For different material, it is specified. Okay, and we'll draw a line parallel to the stress strain curve. So when I say parallel to the stress strain curve, the slope I'm saying as E. So the point at which the two curves met is referred as proof stress, or design yield strength. Getting the point? Yes. So this is the way we find the yield point for the material not showing the definite yield stress, right? So this is the proof stress, and this method is referred as offset method. This method is referred as offset method. Is it clear? So many other materials, what I am saying that what is this? What is the offset method? The method in which the design yield point is determined when it is not showing the definite yield stress by considering a offset parallel to the strain axis. Getting the point? Yes. Okay. We'll see the next one and the last part of this introduction chapter. Okay, that is effect of carbon percentage on material property. Effect of carbon percentage on material property. So what will happen with increase in the carbon content or with decrease in the carbon content, right? So I'm just talking about one and we'll see all the parameters. So if I increase the carbon percentage, so what will happen? So if I increase carbon percentage, what will happen? The voids will be filled with the carbon. Yes, in the steel, the voids will fill with the carbon. Suppose I'm taking the steel. So if the voids are filled with the carbon, what will happen? What will happen? The particle will have a greater strength. Yes. So if a particle will have greater strength, it will have higher ultimate strength, higher yield strength. Yes. It will have greater resistance to friction. Yes. It will have a more wear and tear resistance. Right. So what we can write, with increase in the carbon percentage, greater will be the ultimate strength, yield strength, skid resistance, wear and tear resistance, and obviously if the strength is increasing, then brittleness will also increase, right? Brittleness, etc. So these are the things which increases with increase in the carbon percentage. Okay, now what are the things that decrease with this decrease? What will happen? Ductility. Yes, if the brittleness increases, then ductility will decrease. Then toughness. After this, what will happen? Because ductility in the toughness. So if ductility decreases, then toughness also decrease. Then malleability. What is malleability? When you apply the load, the matter will deform into sheets. When you apply a compressive load, it will form into a sheets, right? So malleability will decrease. Then machinability. Machinability will also decrease. What is machinability? I want to join two components. So more the carbon percentage, difficult it is to join. So less the machinability. Then what is the next? Formability. What is formability? I can give any formation to the structure, right? What type of formation I can give to the structure, right? Easy, less the carbon percentage, easy to give the any form. Okay, so that is formability. So that is the effect of carbon percentage on the material property, right? Any problem, please ask. Any doubt, please ask. Any term that is not clear to you all? Okay. Now, last thing that should be mentioned in your note is tenacity. So what is tenacity? Tenacity is nothing but a property of the material which has high tensile strength. It is a property of the material of high tensile strength, right? So this property is referred as tenacity. The material having the high tensile strength, this property is referred as tenacity. So what is tenacity? Property by virtue of which material has high tensile strength. Is it clear? So that's all from the first chapter, that is the introduction chapter. Any doubt, please ask. I already uploaded the last PDF in the Telegram group, right? You can see it from there. Okay, this PDF also I will be sending the Telegram group also. Any doubt you can mention in the comment. Right? Okay. Last thing as we mentioned daily, right? So this is me, and if you are liking this particular video and if you want more interaction with me with the questions or any other thing, your doubt clearance, you can join the Unacademy Plus subscription. You can use my code BHAR10, as my name is Abhishek Bhartiya. Okay, for the subscription you can get 10% off, right? So all the best, be regular and enjoy the session. Thank you.